Okay, number 6 is called charging. And it says wet on dry and wet. And you'll see what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to put a wet wash down, just some blue. And all charging is the idea of dropping in another color into an undercoat while it's still wet. So I have to work on this fairly quickly but carefully, making sure the color I'm putting on is a pretty wet color, because I need it to stay wet long enough so I can put on another color. Now I can just do part of it, grab a different brush. I'm going to grab some red and just kind of drop it into the blue. That's still wet over here, it's okay. And I'm not going to really do much else other than just that. That's all charging is. So I have my original brush. I'm going to continue over, keeping it kind of wet on the edge, kind of a flat wash. Get in that fin. Get my other brush while this paint is still wet. Gonna grab some red, just drop it in there and just let it do its thing. I'm not brushing really, maybe a little swipe here and there. If you have a fish that has some subtle differences of color, it's a great way to let the colors kind of bleed together. See, this was still wet over here. So you have to kind of work quickly but carefully. It was still wet enough, I just picked it up and kept it moving. Again, I'll put a little more red along there. Grab my brush for the red, grab some red, just kind of keep dropping it in. See, all back here is kind of working itself together because of the water. Go back and get more blue. If this is in a smaller area, you won't have to go back and forth. But I want to keep that. That blue was kind of a watery puddle. So I could just go right back to it and keep. See right here, the red even got lighter because the water, the paint was probably wetter. Okay, maybe just a little more around here, maybe a little bit on top of the back fin. I could throw a little bit more in here where it got real light. And again, I'm not really painting, I'm just kind of dropping it in there and letting the water move it around. Right there, it got a little dry, so I noticed that, and I'm just going to put just the tiniest bit of water right there, just water to kind of let it bleed. And it just does its own thing. You have to just let it go, and that's, again, the charm of watercolor. And I'll cut this video, I'll come back, I'll go blow dry that in a minute, and you'll see that it might be a little bit softer in color, but that's the idea of charging. There's the end of the charging. It has really bled together. Remember, it was just little red dots, and the water that's in the paper will just bleed them together, just in a way that you could never really plan and never do intentionally. Remember, when you want to charge, if you want to do that, practice on a little piece of scrap watercolor paper. The colors you bleed together make a difference. There's kind of a violet tinge between the red and the blue. I would not have wanted to put orange on the blue because they're opposite colors unless that's really the effect I was going for. So you really want to know ahead of time how the colors are going to bleed and blend together. But just know that when you do it on your painting, it may not look exactly the same as when you practiced it. So there you go, there's charging.